was dreaming all through the night. A smiling sun hangs on a cardboard sky, where the future got lost but never learned to die. Unseen visions burning bright, Bradbury's ghost on SL tonight. Open the page, let the wonder ignite. Welcome to SL
Somewhere in a room crammed with rockets that never launch, clocks that run backward, and typewriters that dream, one man still dares to imagine what tomorrow forgot. You are about to enter the unseen visions of Ray Bradbury. Tonight, another lost wonder awakens. This is SL Tonight, Bradbury's Unseen Visions. Good evening, dreamers of the ink apocalypse, and welcome to SL Tonight, where we awaken the living tattoos of Ray Bradbury's immortal, The Illustrated Man. I'm Felix Lebesky, your host for Bradbury's Unseen Visions, The Illustrated Man's Hidden Tales, a groundbreaking series that strips away decades of dust to reveal the raw, prophetic power of this 1951 masterpiece. Ray Bradbury, born August 22, 1920 in Waukegan, Illinois, was a boy who never drove a car, never flew in a plane until he was 62. Yet he conquered the stars with his imagination. Rejected from World War II service due to his poor eyesight, he channeled that outsider energy into stories that warned of technology's seductive dangers. The Illustrated Man was written in a frenzy. Bradbury typed the framed narrative in a single afternoon in a UCLA library, inspired by a tattooed carnival worker he met as a child and the sideshow freaks who fascinated. The tattoos are not mere decoration. They are living prophecies, moving, breathing warnings of humanity's future. Tonight, in Bradbury's Tattooed Prophecies, we begin with the Veldt and the Long Rain, stories that predicted AI addiction and climate despair decades before they became headlines. These aren't just tales, they're Bradbury's screams from the 1950s, when television was new and the atom bomb still fresh. Let's watch the ink come alive. The Veldt. George, I wish you'd look at the nursery. What's wrong with it? I don't know. Well then, I just want you to look at it is all, or call a psychologist in to look at it. What would a psychologist want with a nursery? You know very well what he'd want. His wife paused in the middle of the kitchen and watched the stove busy humming to itself, making supper for four. It's just that the nursery is different now than it was. All right, let's have a look. They walked down the hall of their soundproofed Happy Life home, which had cost them $30,000 installed. This house which clothed and fed and rocked them to sleep and played and sang and was good to them. Their approach sensitized a switch somewhere, and the nursery light flicked on when they came within 10 feet of it. Similarly, behind them in the halls, lights went on and off as they left behind with a soft automaticity. Well, said George Hadley. They stood at the thatched floor of the nursery. It was 40 feet across by 40 feet long and 30 feet high. It had cost half again as much as the rest of the house. Nothing's too good for our children, George had said. The nursery was silent. It was as empty as a jungle glade at a hot high noon. The walls were blank and two-dimensional. Now, as George and Liddy Hadley stood in the center of the room, the walls began to purr and recede into crystalline distance. It seemed And presently an African veld appeared, in 3 dimensions on all sides, in color, reproduced to the final pebble and bit of straw. The ceiling above them became a deep sky with hot yellow sun. George Hadley felt the perspiration start on his brow. Let's get out of this sun. This is a little too real, but I don't see anything wrong. Wait a moment, you'll see. Now the hidden odor of phonics were beginning to blow a wind of odor at the two people in the middle of the baked velvet. The hot straw smell of lion grass, the cool green smell of hidden waterhole, the great rusty smell of animals, the smell of dust like a red paprika in the hot air. And now the sounds, a thump of distant antelope feet on grassy sod, the papery rustling of vultures. A shadow passed through the sky, a shadow flickered on George Hadley's upturned, sweating face. Filthy creatures, he heard his wife say. The vultures. You see, there are the lions, far away, over that way. Now they're on the way to the watering hole. They've just eaten, said Liddy. I don't know what. Some animal. George had to put his hand up to shield off the burning light from his squinting eyes. A zebra or baby giraffe baby. Are you sure? His wife sounded particularly tense. No, it's a little late to be sure, he said, amused. Nothing over there I can see but clean bone, and the vultures dropped what's left. Are you sure? Did you hear that scream? No. About a minute ago? Sorry, no. The lions were coming, and again George Hadley was filled with admiration for the mechanical genius who had conceived this room. A miracle of efficiency selling for an absurdly low price. Every home should have one. Oh, occasionally they frightened you with their clinical accuracy. They startled you, gave you a twinge, but most of the time, what fun for everyone. Not only for your own son and daughter, but for yourself when you felt a quick jaunt to a foreign land, a quick change of scenery. Well, here it was. And here were the lions now, 15 feet away. So real, so feverishly and startlingly real, that you could feel the prickling fur on your hand, and your mouth was stuffed with the dusty upholstery smell of their heated pelts, and the yellow of them was in your eyes like the yellow of exquisite French tapestry, the yellows of lions and summer grass. The sound of the matted lion lungs exhaling on the silent noontide, and the smell of meat from their panting, drooping mouths. The lion stood looking at George and Lydia Hadley with terrible green-yellow eyes. "Watch out!" screamed Lydia. And the lions came running at them. Lydia bolted and ran. Instinctively, George sprang after her. Outside in the hall, with the door slammed, he was laughing and she was crying. And they both stood appalled at each other's reaction. "George!" "Lydia! Oh, my poor sweet Lydia! They almost got us!" "Walls, Lydia. Remember? Crystalline walls. That's all they are." "Well, they look real, I must admit, after in your parlor, but it's all dimensional. Super reactionary, super sensitive colored film, a mental tape film behind glass screens. It's all odorophonics and sonics, Lydia. Here's my handkerchief." "I'm afraid." She came to him and put her body against him and cried steadily. "Did you see? Did you feel? It's too real." "Now, Lydia, you've got to tell Wendy and Peter not to read any more on Africa." Of course, he patted her. "Promise?" "Sure. I'm gonna lock the nursery for a few days until I get my nerves settled. You know how difficult Peter is about that. And I punished him a month ago by locking the nursery for even a few hours. The tantrum he threw. And Wendy, too. They live for the nursery. It's got to be locked. That is all there is to it." "All right." Reluctantly, he locked the huge door. "You've been working too hard. You need a rest." "I don't know. I don't know," she said, blowing her nose, sitting down in a chair that immediately began to rock and comfort her. "Maybe I don't have enough to do. Maybe I have time to think too much. Why don't we shut the whole house off for a few days and take a vacation?" "You mean you want to fry my eggs for me?" "Yes," she nodded. "And darn my socks?" "Yes," a frantic, watered-eyed nodding. "And sweep the house?" "Yes, yes, oh yes." "But I thought that's why we bought this house, so we wouldn't have to do anything." "That's just it. I feel like I don't belong here." The house is wife and mother now, and nursemaid. Can I compete with an African veld? Can I give a bath and scrub to the children as efficiently or quickly as automatic scrub bath can? I cannot. And it isn't just me, it's you. You've been awfully nervous lately. I suppose I have been smoking too much. You look as if you didn't know what to do with yourself in this house either. You smoke a little more every morning and drink a little more every afternoon and need a little more sedative every night. You're beginning to feel a little unnecessary too. Am I? He paused and tried to feel into himself to see what was really there. Oh, George. She looked behind him at the nursery door. Those lions can't get out of here, can they? He looked at the door and saw it tremble as if something had jumped against it from the other side. Of course not, he said. At dinner they ate alone, for Wendy and Peter were at a special plastic carnival across town and had televised home to say they'd be late to go ahead eating. So George Hadley, bemused, sat watching the dining room table produce warm dishes of food from its mechanical interior. We forgot the ketchup, he said. Sorry, said a small voice within the table, and ketchup appeared. As for the nursery, thought George Hadley, it won't hurt for the children to be locked out of it a while. Too much of anything isn't good for anyone, and it was clearly indicated that the children had been spending a little too much time on Africa. That sun! He could feel it on his neck, still like a hot paw. And the lions. And the smell of blood. Remarkable how the nursery caught the telepathic emanations of children's minds and created life to fill their every desire. The children thought lions, and there were lions. The children thought zebras, and there were zebras. Sun, sun. Giraffes, giraffes. Death, and death. That last. He chewed tastelessly on the meat that the table had cut for him. Death thoughts. They were awfully young, Winnie and Peter, for death thoughts. Oh no, you were never too young, really. Long before you knew what death was, you were wishing it on someone else. When you were 2 years old, you were shooting people with cat pistols. But this? The long, hot African veld, the awful death in the jaws of a lion, and repeated again and again? Where are you going? He didn't answer Lydia. Preoccupied, he let lights glow softly on ahead of him, extinguished behind him as he padded to the nursery door. He listened against it. Far away, a lion roared. He unlocked the door and opened it. Just before he stepped inside, he heard a faraway scream, and then another roar from the lions which subsided quickly. He stepped into Africa. How many times in the last year had he opened this door and found Wonderland, Alice, the Mock Turtle, or Aladdin and his magical lamp, or Jack Pumpkinhead of Oz, or Dr. Dolittle, or the cow jumping over the very real appearing moon, all the delightful contraptions of a make-believe world. How often he had seen Pegasus flying in the sky ceiling, or seen fountains of red fireworks, or heard angel voices singing. But now, this yellow-hot Africa, this baked oven with murder in the heat? Perhaps Lydia was right. Perhaps they needed a little vacation from the fantasy which was growing a bit too real for 10-year-old children. It was all right to exercise one's mind with gymnastic fantasies, but when the lively child mind settled on one pattern, it seemed that at a distance for the past month he had heard lions roaring and smelled their strong odors seeping as far away as the study door, but being busy, he had paid it no attention. George Hadley stood on the African glass lamp alone. The lions looked up from their feeding, watching. The only flaw to the illusion was the open door through which he could see his wife, far down the dark hall, like a framed picture, eating her dinner abstractedly. Go away, he said to the lions. They did not go. He knew the principle of the room exactly. You sent out your thoughts, whatever you thought would appear. Let's have Aladdin in his lamp, he snapped. The Veldling remained. The lions remained. Come on, room, I demand Aladdin! Nothing happened. The lions mumbled in their baked pelts. Aladdin! We went back to dinner. The full room's out of order. It won't respond. Or what? Or it can't respond. Because the children had thought about Africa and lions and killing so many days that the room is in a rut. Could be. Or Peter set it to remain that way. Set it? He may have gotten into machinery and fixed something. Peter doesn't know machinery. He's a wise one for 10, that IQ of his. Nevertheless, hello, Mom. Hello, Dad. Hadley's turn. Winnie and Peter were coming in the front door, cheeks like peppermint candy, eyes like bright blue agate marbles. The smell of ozone on their jumpers from their trip in the helicopter. You're just in time for supper, said both parents. We're full of strawberry ice cream and hot dogs, said the children, holding hands, but we'll sit and watch. Yes, come tell us about the nursery, said George Hadley. The brother and sister blinked at him and then at each other. Nursery? All about Africa and everything, said the father with false joviality. I don't understand. Your mother and I were just traveling through Africa with rod and reel. Tom Swift and his electric lion, said George Hadley. There's no Africa in the nursery, said Peter simply. Oh, come now, Peter, we know better. I don't remember any Africa, said Peter to Winnie. Do you? No. Let's see and come tell. She obeyed. Winnie, come back here, said George Hadley, but she was gone. The house lights followed her like a flock of fireflies. Too late, he realized he had forgotten to lock the nursery door after his last inspection. Winnie will look and come tell us, said Peter. She doesn't have to tell me. I've seen it. I'm sure you're mistaken, Father. I'm not, Peter. Come along now. But Winnie was back. It's not Africa, she said breathlessly. We'll see about this, said George Hadley, and they all walked down the hall together and opened the nursery door. There was green, lovely forest, a lovely river, a purple mountain, high voices singing, and Rima, lovely and mysterious, lurking in the trees with colorful flights of butterflies, like animated bouquets lingering in her long hair. The African veltlin was gone, the lions were gone. Only Rima was here now, singing a song so beautiful that it brought tears to your eyes. George Hadley looked in at the changed scene. Go to bed, he said to the children. They opened their mouths. You heard me. They went off to the air closet where the wind sucked them like brown leaves up the flue to their slumber rooms. George Hadley walked through the singing glade and picked up something that lay in the corner near where the lions had been. He walked slowly back to his wife. What is that? She asked. An old wallet of mine. He showed it to her. The smell of hot grass was on it and the smell of a lion. There were drops of saliva on it, it had been chewed, and there were blood smears on both sides. He closed the nursery door and locked it tight. In the middle of the night he was still awake, and he heard his wife was awake. Do you think Wendy changed it? He said at last in the dark room. Of course. Made it from the forest and put Rima there instead of lions? Yes. Why? I don't know, but it's staying locked until I find out. How did your wallet get there? I don't know anything, except that I'm beginning to be sorry we bought that room for the children. If the children are neurotic at all, a room like that, it's supposed to help them work off their neuroses in a healthful way. I'm starting to wonder. He stared at the ceiling. We're giving the children everything they ever wanted. Is this our reward? Secrecy? Disobedience? Who was it said children are carpets? They should be stepped on occasionally. We've never lifted a hand. They're insufferable. Let's admit it. They come and go when they like. They treat us as if we were the offspring. They're spoiled and we're spoiled. They've been acting funny ever since you forbade them to take the rocket to New York a few months ago. They're not old enough to do that alone, I explained. Nevertheless, I've noticed that they've been decidedly cool towards us since. I think I'll have Dave McLean come tomorrow morning and have a look at Africa. But it's not Africa now, it's Green Manson's country in Rima. I have a feeling it'll be Africa again before then. A moment later they heard the screams. Two screams. Two people screaming from downstairs, and then roar of lions. Winnie and Peter aren't in their rooms, said the wife. He lay in his bed with his beating heart. No, they've broken into the nursery. Those screams, they sound familiar. Do they? Yes, awfully. Although the beds tried very hard, the two adults couldn't be rocked to sleep for another hour. The smell of cats was in the night air. Father? Said Peter. Yes? Peter looked at his shoes. He never looked at his father anymore, nor at his mother. You aren't going to lock up the nursery for good, are you? That depends. On what? On you and your sister. You intersperse this Africa with a little variety. Oh, Sweden perhaps, or Denmark, or China. I thought we were free to play as we wished. You are, within reason. What's wrong with Africa, Father? Oh, so now you admit you've been conjuring up Africa, do you? I wouldn't want the nursery locked up, said Peter coldly. Ever. Matter of fact, we're thinking of turning the whole house off for about a month. Live sort of a carefree one-for-all existence. That sounds dreadful. Why would I have to tie my own shoes instead of letting the shoe tire do it? And brush my own teeth? And comb my hair? And give myself a bath? It'd be fun for a change, don't you think? No, it'd be horrid. I don't like it when you took out the picture painter last month. That's because I wanted you to learn to paint all by yourself, son. I don't want to do anything but look and listen and smell. What else is there to do? Alright, go play in Africa. Would you show off the house sometime soon? We're considering it. I don't think you'd be able to consider it anymore, Father. I won't have any threats from my son. Very well, and Peter strolled off to the nursery. Am I on time? Said David McLean. Breakfast? Asked George Hadley. Thanks, I had some. What's the trouble? David, you're a psychologist. I should hope so. Well, then, have a look at our nursery. You saw it a year ago when you dropped by. Did you notice anything peculiar about it then? Can't say I did. The usual violences, a tendency towards slight paranoia here or there, usual in children because they feel persecuted by parents constantly, but, well, really nothing. They walked down the hall. I locked the nursery up, and the children broke back into it during the night. I let them stay so they could form the patterns for you to see. There was a terrible screaming from the nursery. There it is. See what you make of it. They walked in on the children without rapping. The screams had faded. The lions were feeding. Run outside a moment, children. No, don't change the mental combination. Leave the walls as they are. Get. With the children gone, the two men stood studying the lions clustered at a distance, eating with great relish whatever they had caught. I wish I knew what it was, said George Hadley. Sometimes I can almost see. Do you think if I brought high-powered binoculars here and... Dave McLean laughed dryly. Hardly. He turned to study all four walls. How long has this been going on? A little over a month. It certainly doesn't feel good. I want facts, not feelings. My dear George, a psychologist never saw a fact in his life. He only hears about feelings, vague things. This doesn't feel good, I tell you. Trust my hunches and my instincts. I have a nose for something bad. This is very bad. My advice to you is to have the whole damn room torn down and your children brought to me every day during the next year for treatment. Is it that bad? I'm afraid so. One of the original uses of these nurseries was so that we could study the patterns left on the walls by the children's mind, study at our leisure, and help the child. In this case, however, the room has become a channel towards destructive thoughts, instead of a release away from them. Didn't you sense this before? I sensed only that you spoiled your children more than most, and now you're letting them down in some way. What way? I wouldn't let them go to New York. What else? I've taken a few machines in the house and threatened them a month ago with closing up the nursery unless they did their homework. I did close it for a few days to show I meant business. Aha! Does that mean anything? Everything. Where before they had Santa Claus, now they have a Scrooge. Children prefer Santas. You let this room and this house replace you and your wife and your children's affections. This room is their mother and father, far more important in their lives than their real parents. And now you come along and want to shut it off. No wonder there's hatred here. You can feel it coming out of the sky. Feel that sun, George. You'll have to change your life. Like too many others, you built it around creature comforts. Why, you'd starve tomorrow if something went wrong in your kitchen. You wouldn't know how to tap an egg. Nevertheless, turn everything off, start new. It'll take time, but we'll make good children out of bad in a year. Wait and see. But won't the shock be too much for the children, shutting the room up abruptly, for good? I don't want them going any deeper into this, that's all. The lions were finished with their red feast. The lions were standing on the edge of the clearing watching the two men. Now, I am feeling persecuted, said McLean. Let's get out of here. I never had cared for these damn rooms. Make me nervous. Lions are real, don't they? Said George Hadley. I don't suppose there's any way... What? That they could become real? Not that I know. Some flaw in the machinery? A tampering or something? No. They went to the door. I don't imagine a room like this will like being turned off, said the father. Nothing ever likes to die, even a room. I wonder if it hates me for wanting to switch it off. Paranoia is thick around here today, said David McLean. You can follow it like a sport. Hello. He bent and picked up a bloody scarf. This yours? No. George Hadley's face was rigid. It belongs to Lydia. They went to the fuse box together and threw the switch that killed the nursery. The two children were in hysterics. They screamed and pranced and threw things. They yelled and sobbed and swore and jumped at the furniture. You can't do that to the nursery. You can't. Now, children. The children flung themselves onto a couch, weeping. George, said Lydia Hadley, turn on the nursery just for a few moments. You can't be so abrupt. No, you can't be so cruel. Lydia, it's off and it stays off, and the whole damn house dies as of here and now. The more I see of the mess we've put ourselves in, the more it sickens me. We've been contemplating our mechanical electronic nails for too long. My God, how we need a breath of honest air. Then he marched around the house, turning off the voice clocks, the stoves, the heaters, the shoe shiners, shoelacers, the body scrubbers, and the swabbers and massagers, and every other machine he could put his hand to. The house full of dead bodies, it seemed. It felt like a mechanical cemetery. So silent. None of the humming hidden energy of machines waiting to function at the tap of a button. Don't let them do it, wailed Peter at the ceiling, as if he were talking to the house, the nursery. Don't let the father kill everything. He turned to his father. Oh, I hate you. Insults won't get you anywhere. I wish you were dead. We were for a long while. Now we're going to really start living. Instead of being handled and massaged, we're going to live. Wendy was still crying, and Peter joined her again. Just a moment, just one moment, just another moment of nursery, they wailed. Oh, George, it can't hurt. All right, if they'll just shut up. 1 minute, mind you, and then off forever. Daddy, 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 sang the children, smiling with wet faces. And then we're going on vacation. David McLean is coming back in a half hour to help us move out and get to the airport. I'm going to dress. You turn the nursery on for a minute, Lydia. Just a minute, mind you. Then the three of them went babbling off while he let himself be vacuumed upstairs to the air flute and set about dressing himself. A minute later, Lydia appeared. I'll be glad when we get away. Did you leave them in the nursery? I wanted to dress too. Oh, that horrid Africa. What can they see in it? Well, in 5 minutes we'll be on our way to Iowa. Lord, how did we ever get in this house? What prompted us to buy a nightmare? Pride, money, foolishness. I think we'd better get downstairs before those kids get engrossed with this damn beast again. Just then they heard the children calling, Daddy, Mommy, come quick, quick! They went downstairs in the air flew and ran down the hall. The children were nowhere in sight. Wendy, Peter? They ran into the nursery. The veldt land was empty, save for the children were nowhere in sight. Wendy, Peter, they ran into the nursery. The vault land was empty, save for the lions waiting, looking at them. Peter? Wendy? The door slammed. Wendy! Peter! George Hadley and his wife whirled and ran back to the door. Open the door! Cried George Hadley, trying the knob. Why, they've locked it from the outside. Peter! He beat at the door. Open up! He heard Peter's voice outside against the door. Don't let them switch off the nursery in the house, he was saying. Mr. and Mrs. George Hadley beat on the door. Now don't be ridiculous, children. It's time to go. Mr. McLean will be here in a minute. And then they heard the sound. The lions on three sides of them in the yellow veldt grass, padding through the dry straw, rumbling and roaring in their throats. The lions. Mr. Hadley looked at his wife, and they turned and looked back at the beast, edging slowly forward, crouching, tail stiff. Mr. and Mrs. Hadley screamed. And suddenly they realized why those other screams had sounded familiar. Well, here I am, said Dave McLean in the nursery doorway. Oh, hello. He stared at the two children seated in the center of the open glade eating a little picnic lunch. Beyond them was a water hole in the yellow veld land. Above was the hot sun. He began to perspire. Where are your father and mother? Children looked up and smiled. Oh, they'll be here directly. Good, we must get going. At a distance, Mr. McLean saw the lions fighting and clawing and then quieting down to feed in silence under the shady trees. He squinted at the lions with his hand tipped to his eyes. Now the lions were done feeding. They moved to the waterhole to drink. A shadow flickered over Mr. McLean's hot face. Many shadows flickered. The vultures were dropping down the blazing sky. A cup of tea? Asked Wendy in the silence. The long rain. The rain continued. It was a hard rain. A perpetual rain, a sweating and steaming rain. It was a mizzle, a downpour, a fountain, a whipping at the eyes, an undertow at the ankles. It was a rain to drown all rains and the memory of rains. It came by the pound and the ton. It acted the jungle and cut the trees like scissors and shaved the grass and tunneled the soil and molted the bushes. It shrank men's hands into the hands of wrinkled apes. It rained a solid glassy rain, and it never stopped. How much farther, Lieutenant? I don't know. A mile? 10 miles? 1,000? Aren't you sure? How can I be sure? I don't like this rain. If we only knew how far it is to Sundome, I'd feel better. Another hour or two from here. You really think so, Lieutenant? Of course. Are you lying to keep us happy? I'm lying to keep you happy. Shut up. The two men sat together in the rain. Behind them sat two other men who were wet and tired and slumped like clay that was melting. The lieutenant looked up. He had a face that had once been brown, and now the rain had washed it pale. And the rain had washed the color from his eyes, and they were white, as were his teeth, as was his hair. He was all white. Even his uniform was beginning to turn white, perhaps a little green with fungus. The lieutenant felt the rain on his cheeks. How many million years since the rain stopped raining here on Venus? Don't be crazy, said one of the other two men. It never stops raining on Venus. It just goes on and on. I lived here for 10 years and I never saw a minute or even a second when it wasn't pouring. It's like living under water, said the lieutenant, and rose up, shrugging his guns into place. Well, we better get going. We'll find that sun dome yet. Oh, we won't find it, said the cynic. It's an hour or so. Now you're lying to me, Lieutenant. No, now I'm lying to myself. This is one of those times when you gotta lie. I can't take much more of this. They walked down the jungle trail now and then looking at their compass. There was no direction anywhere, only what the compass said. There's a gray sky and rain falling and jungle and a path, and far back behind them somewhere a rocket in which they had ridden and fallen. A rocket in which lay two of their friends, dead in dripping rain. They walked in single file, not speaking. They came to a river which lay wide and flat and brown, flowing down to the great single sea. The surface of it was stippled in a billion places by the rain. All right, Simmons. The lieutenant nodded, and Simmons took a small packet from his back, and with the pressure of a hidden chemical, inflated it into a large boat. The lieutenant directed the cutting of wood and the quick making of paddles, and they set out into the river, paddling swiftly across the smooth surface in the rain. The lieutenant felt the cold rain on his cheeks, and on his neck, and on his moving arms. The cold was beginning to seep into his lungs. He felt the rain on his ears, on his eyes, on his legs. He didn't sleep last night. Or I didn't sleep last night, he said. Who could? Who has? When? How many nights have we slept? 30 nights, 30 days. Who can sleep with rain slamming their head, banging away? I'd give anything for a hat, anything at all, just so it wouldn't hit my head anymore. I have headaches. My head is sore, hurts all the time. I'm sorry I came to China, said one of the others. First time I ever heard Venus called China. Sure, China. Chinese water cure. Remember the old torture? Rope you against the wall, drop one drop of water on your head every half hour, you go crazy waiting for the next one? Well, that's Venus, but on a big scale. We're not made for water. You can't sleep. You can't breathe right, and you're crazy from just being soggy. If we'd been ready for a crash, we might have brought waterproof uniform and hats. It's this beating rain on your head gets you most of all. It's so heavy it's like a BB shot. I don't know how long I could take it. Boy, me for the sun dome. The man who thought them up thought of something. They crossed the river, and in crossing they thought of the sun dome somewhere ahead of them shining in the jungle rain. A yellow house, round and as bright as the sun. A house 15 feet high by 100 feet in diameter, in which was warm and quiet and hot food and freedom from rain. And in the center of the sun dome, of course, was the sun. A small, floating, free globe of yellow fire drifting in space at the top of the building where you could look at it from where you sat, smoking or reading a book or drinking your hot chocolate crowned with marshmallow dollops. There it would be, the yellow sun just the size of the Earth sun, and it was warm and continuous, and the rain world of Venus would be forgotten as long as they stayed in that house and idled their time. The lieutenant turned and looked back at the three men using their oars and gritting their teeth. They were as white as mushrooms, as white as he was. Venus bleached everything away in a few months. Even the jungle was an immense cartoon nightmare, for how could the jungle be green with no sun, with always rain falling and always dust? The white, white jungle with the pale cheese-colored leaves, and the earth carved of wet camembert, and the tree boles like immense toadstools. Everything black and white. And how often could you see the soil itself? Wasn't it mostly a creek, a stream, a puddle, a pool, a lake, a river, and then, at last, the sea? Here we are! We leapt out on the farther shore, splashing and sending up showers. The boat was deflated and stored in a cigarette pack. Then, standing on the rainy shore, they tried to light up a few smokes for themselves, and it was 5 minutes or so before, shuddering, they worked the inverted lighter and cupped their hands, managing a few drags upon cigarettes that all too quickly went limp and beaten away from their lips by a sudden slap of rain. They walked on. Wait just a moment. I thought I saw something ahead, said the lieutenant. The sun dome? I'm not sure. The rain closed in again. Simmons began to run. The sun dome! Come back, Simmons! The Sun Dome! Simmons vanished in the rain. The others ran after him. They found him in a little clearing, and they stopped and looked at him and what he had discovered. The rocket ship. It was lying where they had left it. Somehow they had circled back and were where they had started. In the ruin of the ship, green fungus was growing up out of the mouths of the two dead men. As they watched, the fungus took flower, the petals broke away in the rain, and the fungus died. How did we do it? An electrical storm must be nearby. Threw our compasses off. That explains it. You're right. What do we do now? Start out again. Good Lord, we're not any closer to anywhere. Let's try to keep calm about it, Simmons. Calm? Calm? This rain's driving me wild. We have enough food for another 2 days if we're careful. The rain danced on their skin, on their wet uniforms. The rain streamed from their nose and ears, from their fingers and knees. They looked like stone fountains frozen in the jungle, issuing forth water from every pore. And as they stood from a distance, they heard a roar. And the monster came out of the rain. The monster was supported on 1,000 electric blue legs. It walked swiftly and terribly. It struck down a leg with a driving blow. Everywhere a leg struck, a tree fell and burned. Great whiffs of ozone filled the raining air, and smoke blew away and was broken up by the rain. The monster was a half-mile wide and a mile high, and it fell to the ground as a great blind thing. Sometimes for a moment it had no legs at all. Then in an instant 1,000 whips would fall out of its belly, white-blue whips to sting the jungle. There's the electrical storm. There's the thing ruined our compasses, and it's coming this way. Lie down, everyone, said the lieutenant. Run! Cried Simmons. Don't be a fool. Lie down. It hits the highest points. We may get through unhurt. Lie down about 50 feet from the rocket. It may very well spin its force there and leave us be. Get down! The men flopped. Is it coming? They asked each other for a moment. Coming. Is it nearer? 200 yards off. Nearer? Here she is! The monster came and stood over them, and dropped down 10 blue bolts of lightning which struck the rocket. The rocket flashed like a beaten gong and gave off a metal ringing. The monster let down 15 more bolts which danced about in a ridiculous pantomime, feeling of the jungle and the watery soil. No, no! One of the men jumped up. Get down, you fool! No! The lightning struck the rocket another dozen times. The lieutenant turned his head on his arm and saw the blue blazing flashes. He saw trees split and crumple into ruin. He saw the monstrous dark cloud turn like a black disk overhead and hurl down 100 other poles of electricity. The man who leapt up was now running, like someone in a great hall of pillars. He ran and dodged between the pillars, and then at last a dozen of pillars slammed down, and there was a sound a fly makes when landing upon a row of wires of an exterminator. The lieutenant remembered this from his childhood on a farm, and there was the smell of a man burned to a cinder. The lieutenant lowered his head. Don't look up, he told the others. He's afraid that he too might run at any moment. The storm above them flashed down another series of bolts and then moved on away. Once again there was only the rain, which rapidly cleared the air of the charred smell, and in a moment the 3 remaining men were sitting and waiting for the beat of their hearts to subside into quiet once more. They walked over to the body, thinking that perhaps they could still save the man's life. They couldn't believe that there wasn't some way to help the man. It was the natural act of men who had not accepted death, and so they have touched it and turned it over and made plans to bury it or leave it there for the jungle to bury in an hour of quick growth. The body was twisted steel, wrapped in burned leather. It looked like it was a dummy that had been thrown into an incinerator and pulled out after the wax had sunk to the charcoal skeleton. Only the teeth were white, and they shone like a strange white bracelet dropped halfway through a clenched black fist. He shouldn't have jumped up, they said it almost at the same time. Even as they stood over the body, it began to vanish, for the vegetation was edging in upon it, little vines and ivy and creepers, and even flowers for the dead. At a distance, the storm walked off on blue bolts of lightning and was gone. They crossed a river and a creek and a stream, and a dozen other rivers and creeks and streams. Before their eyes, rivers appeared, rushing, new rivers, while old rivers changed their courses. Rivers the color of mercury, rivers the color of silver and milk. They came to the sea. The single sea. There is only one continent on Venus. This land was 3,000 miles long by 1,000 miles wide, and about this island was the single sea, which covered the entire reigning planet. The single sea which lay upon the pallid shore with little motion. This way, the lieutenant nodded south. I'm sure there are 2 sun domes down that way. While they were at it, why didn't they build 100 more? There's 120 of them now, aren't there? 126 as of last month. They tried to push a bill through Congress back on Earth a year ago to provide for a couple dozen more, but oh no, you know how that is. They'd rather have a few men went crazy with the rain. They started south. Lieutenant Simmons and the third man, Pickard, walked in the rain that fell heavy and lightly, and the rain that poured and hammered and did not stop falling upon the land and the sea and the walking people. Simmons saw it first. There it is. There's what? The sun dome! The lieutenant blinked the water from his eyes and raised his hands to warn off the stinging blows of the rain. At a distance there was a yellow glow on the edge of the jungle by the sea. It was indeed the sun dome. The men smiled at each other. Looks like you were right, Lieutenant. Luck. Brother, that puts muscle in me just seeing it. Come on, last one's the son of a bitch. Simmons began to trot. The others automatically fell in with this gas, tired but keeping pace. A big pot of coffee for me, panted Simmons, smiling. And a pan of cinnamon buns, by God. And just lie there and let the old sun hit you. The guy that invented the sun domes, you should have got a medal. They ran faster. The yellow glow grew brighter. Thus a lot of men went crazy before they figured out the cure. Think it'll be obvious right off. Simmons panted the word and cadenced his running. Rain! Rain years ago. Found a friend of mine out in the jungle, wandering around in the rain, saying over and over, don't know enough, come in out of the rain. Don't know enough to come in out of the rain. Don't know enough, on and on. Like that. Poor crazy bastard. Save your breath. They ran. They all laughed. They reached the door of the sun dome laughing. Simmons yanked the door wide. Hey! Bring on the coffee and the buns! There was no reply. They stepped through the door. The sun dome was empty and dark. There was no synthetic yellow sun floating in a high gaseous whisper at the center of the blue ceiling. There was no food waiting. It was as cold as a vault. And through 1,000 holes in which had been newly punctured in the ceiling, water streamed. The rain fell down, soaking into the thick rugs and the heavy modern furniture, and splashing onto the glass tables. The jungle was growing up like moss into the room, on top of the bookcases and the divans. The rain slashed through the holes and fell upon the three men's faces. Pickard began to laugh quietly. Shut up, Pickard. Ye gods, look what's here for us. No food, no sun, nothing. The Venetians, they did it, of course. Simmons nodded. When the rain funneled down on his face, the water rained into his silvered hair and on his white eyebrows. Every once in a while, the Venetians come up out of the sea and attack the sun dome. They know if they ruin the sun domes, they can ruin us. But aren't the sun domes protected with guns? Sure. Simmons stepped aside to a place that was relatively dry. But it's been 5 years since the Venetians tried anything. The fence relaxes. They caught this dome unaware. Where are the bodies? The Venetians took them down into the sea. I hear they have a delightful way of drowning you. It takes about 8 hours to drown the way they work it. Real delightful. But there isn't any food here at all, Pickard laughed. The lieutenant frowned at him, nodding at him so Simmons could see. Simmons shook his head and went back to a room at one side of the oval chamber. The kitchen was strewn with soggy loaves of bread and a meat that had grown at faint green fur. Rain came through 100 holes in the kitchen roof. Brilliant. The lieutenant glanced up at the holes. I don't suppose we could plug up those holes and get snug here. Without food, sir? Simmons snorted. Notice the sun machine's torn apart. Our best bet's to make our way to the next sun dome. How far is that from here? Not far, as I recall. They built two rather close together here. Perhaps if we waited here, a rescue mission from the other might. It's probably been here and gone already some days ago. They'll send a crew to repair this place in about 6 months when they get the money from Congress. I don't think we better wait. Alright then, we'll eat what's left of our rations and get on to the next dome. Lamp Picker said, if only the rain wouldn't hit my head. Just for a few minutes. If I could only remember what it's like to not be bothered. He bit his hands on his skull and held it tight. I remember when I was in school, a bully used to sit in back of me and pinch me and pinch me and pinch me every 5 minutes, all day long. He did that for weeks and months. My arm was sore and black and blue all the time, and I thought I'd go crazy from being pinched. One day I must have gone a little mad from being hurt, and I turned around and took a metal tri-square I used in mechanical drawing and almost killed that bastard. I almost cut his lousy head off. I almost took his eye out before they dragged me out of the room, and I kept yelling, "Why don't he leave me alone? Why don't he leave me alone?" Brother! His hands clenched the bone of his neck, shaking, tightening. His eyes shut. But what do I know? How do I hit? Who do I hit? Who do I tell to lay off? Stop bothering me. This damn rain, like the pinching, always on you. That's all you hear. That's all you feel. We'll be at the other sun dome by 4 this afternoon. Sun dome? Look at this one. What if all the sun domes on Venus are gone? What then? What if all the holes? What if there are holes in all the ceilings and the rain coming in? We'll have to chance it. I'm tired of chancing it. All I want is a roof and some quiet. I want to be alone. That's only 8 hours off if you hold on. Don't worry, I'll hold on all right. And Pickard laughed, not looking at them. Let's eat, said Simmons, watching them. They set off down the coast southward again. After 4 hours, they had to cut inland to go around a river that was a mile wide and so swift it was not navigable by boat. They had to walk inland 6 miles to a place where the river boiled out of the earth suddenly like a mortal wound. In the rain, they walked on solid ground and returned to the sea. "I've got to sleep," said Pickard at last. He slumped. "Haven't slept in 4 weeks. Tried. Couldn't. Sleep here." The sky was getting darker. The night of Venus was setting in, and it was so completely black that it was dangerous to move. Simmons and the lieutenant fell to their knees also, and the lieutenant said, "All right, we'll see what we can do. We tried it before, but I don't know. Sleep doesn't seem one of the things you can get in this weather." They lay out full, propping their heads up so the water wouldn't come to their mouths, and they closed their eyes. The lieutenant twitched. He did not sleep. There were things that crawled on his skin. Things grew upon him in layers. Drops fell and touched other drops, and they became streams that trickled over his body. And while these moved down in his flesh, the small growths of the forest took root in his clothing. He felt the ivy cling and make a second garment over it. He felt the small flowers bud and open and petal away, and still the rain pattered on his body and on his head. In the luminous night, for the vegetation glowed in the darkness, he could see the other two men outlined, like logs that had fallen and taken upon themselves, velvet coverings of grass and flowers. The rain hid his face. He covered his hands with his face with his hands. The rain hit his neck. He turned over on his stomach in the mud on the rubbery plants, and the rain hit his back and hit his leg. Suddenly he leapt up and began to brush the water from himself. 1,000 hands were touching him, and he no longer wanted to be touched. He no longer could stand being touched. He floundered and struck something else and knew that it was Simmons, standing up in the rain, sneezing moisture, coughing and choking. And then Pickard was up, shouting, running about. "Wait a minute, Pickard!" "Stop it! Stop it!" Pickard screamed, fired off his gun 6 times at the night sky. And in the flashes of powder illumination they could see armies of raindrops, suspended in a vast, motionless amber, for an instant, hesitating as if shocked by the explosion. 15 billion droplets, 15 billion tears, 15 billion ornaments, jewels standing out against a white velvet viewing board. And then, with the light gone, the drops which had waited to have their pictures taken, which had suspended their downward rush, fell upon them, stinging in an insect cloud of coldness and pain. "Stop it! Stop it! Pickard!" But Pickard was only standing now, alone. When the lieutenant switched on a small hand lamp and played it over Pickard's wet face, the eyes of the man were dilated, and his mouth was open. His face turned up so the water hit and splashed on his tongue, and hit and drowned his wide eyes, and bubbled in a whispering froth on the nostrils. "Pickard!" The man would not reply. He simply stood there for a long while with the bubbles of rain breaking out his whitened hair and manacles of rain jewels dripping from his wrists and his neck. "Pickard, we're leaving. We're going on. Follow us." The rain dripped from Pickard's ears. "Do you hear me, Pickard?" It was like shouting down a well. "Pickard!" "Leave him alone," said Simmons. "We can't go on without him." "Well, what do we do? Carry him?" Simmons spat. "He's no good to us or himself. You know what he'll do? He'll just stand there and drown." "What?" "You ought to know that by now. Don't you know the story? He'll just stand here with his head up and let the rain come out in his nostrils and his mouth. He'll breathe the water. That's how they found General Mintz that time, sitting on a rock with his head back, breathing the rain. His lungs were full of water." Lieutenant turned the light back to the unblinking face. Pickard's nostrils gave off a tiny, whispering, wet sound. "Pickard!" The lieutenant slapped his face. "He can't even feel you. In a few days in this rain, and you don't have any face or any legs or any hands." The lieutenant looked at his own hand in horror. He could no longer feel it. "But we can't leave Pickard here." "I'll show you what we can do." Simmons fired his gun. Pickard fell into the raining earth. Simmons said, "Don't move, Lieutenant. I got my gun ready for you, too. Think it over." He would only have stood it or sat there and drowned. It's quicker this way. Lieutenant blinked at the body. But you killed it. Yes, because he'd have killed us by being a burden. You saw his face. Insane. After a moment, the lieutenant nodded. All right. They walked off into the rain. It was dark, and their hand lamps threw a beam that pierced the rain for only a few feet. After a half hour, they had to stop and sit through the rest of the night, aching with hunger, waiting for the dawn to come. When it did come, it was gray and continually raining as before, and they began to walk again. We miscalculated, said Simmons. No, another hour. Speak louder, I can't hear you. Simmons stopped and smiled. By Christ, he said and touched his ears. My ears, they've gone out on me. All the rain pouring finally numbed me right down to the bone. Can't you hear anything? Said the lieutenant. What? Simmons' eyes were puzzled. Nothing. Come on. I think I'll wait here. You go on ahead. You can't do that. I can't hear you. You go on. I'm tired. I don't think the sun dome is down this way. And if it is, it's probably got holes in the roof like the last one. I think I'll just sit here. Get up from there. So long, Lieutenant. You can't give up now. I've got a gun here that says I'm staying. I just don't give a damn anymore. I'm not crazy yet, but I'm the next thing to it. I don't want to go out that way. As soon as you get out of sight, I'm going to use this gun on myself. Simmons! You said my name. I can read that much off your lips. Simmons! Look, it's a matter of time. Either I die now or in a few hours. Wait till you get to the next dome, if you ever get there, and find rain coming in through the roof. Won't that be nice? The lieutenant waited and then splashed off in the rain. He turned and called back once, but Simmons was only sitting there with a gun in his hand, waiting for him to get out of sight. He shook his head and waved the lieutenant on. The lieutenant didn't even hear the sound of the gun. He began to eat the flowers as he walked. They stayed down for a time and weren't poisonous. Neither were they particularly sustaining, and he'd vomit them up sickly a minute or so later. Once he took some leaves and tried to make himself a hat, but he'd tried that before. The rain melted the leaves from his head. Once picked, the vegetation rotted away and fell away in gray masses into his fingers. Another 5 minutes, he told himself. Another 5 minutes, and I'll walk in the sea and keep walking. We weren't made for this. No Earthman was or ever will be able to take it. Your nerves, your nerves. He floundered his way through a sea of slush and foliage and came to a small hill. At a distance, there was a faint yellow smudge and the cold veils of water. The next sundown. Through the trees, a round yellow building, far away. For a moment he only stood, swaying, looking at it. He began to run, then he slowed down, for he was afraid. He didn't call out. What if it's the same one? What if it's the dead sun dome with no sun in it? He thought. He slipped and fell. Lie here, he thought. This is the wrong one. Lie here. It's no use. Drink all you want. But he managed to climb to his feet again and cross several creeks, and the yellow light grew very bright, and he began to run again, his feet crashing into the mirrors and glass, his arms flailing at diamonds and precious stones. He stood before the yellow door. The printed letters over it said the sun dome. He put his numb hand up to feel it. Then he twisted the doorknob and stumbled in. He stood for a moment looking about. Behind him the rain whirled at the door. Ahead of him, upon a low table, stood a silver pot of hot chocolate, steaming, and a cup full with a marshmallow in it. And beside that, on another tray, stood thick sandwiches of rich chicken meat and fresh cut tomatoes and green onions. And on a rod just before his eyes was a great thick green Turkish towel and a bin in which to throw wet clothes, and to his right a small cubicle in which heat rays might dry you instantly. And upon a chair a fresh change of uniform, waiting for anyone, himself or any lost one, to make use of it. And farther over, coffee in steaming copper urns, and a phonograph in which music was playing quietly, and books bound in red and brown leather. And near the books a cot, a soft, deep cot upon which one might lie, exposed and bare, to drink in the rays of one great bright thing which dominated the long room. He put his hands to his eyes. He saw other men moving toward him, but said nothing to them. He waited, and opened his eyes, and looked. The water from his uniform pooled at his feet, and he felt it drying from his hair and his face and his chest and his arms and his legs. He was looking at the sun. It hung in the center of the room, a large and yellow and warm. It made not a sound, and there was no sound in the room. The door was shut, and the rain only memory to his tingling body. The sun hung high in the blue sky of the room, warm, hot, yellow, and very fine. He walked forward, tearing off his clothes as he went. And that was The Veld and the Long Rain. Stories that tattoo Bradbury's deepest fears on our skin. In 1950, Bradbury was 30, living in Venice, California with his wife Marguerite and newborn daughter, typing on a rented library typewriter for 10 cents an hour because he couldn't afford a home office. The carnival world of his childhood, Mr. Electrico the musician, who knighted him with a sword and told him live forever, never left him. The illustrated man's tattoos were born from that memory, a living freak show warning of technology seduction. The veil came from his terror of television rotting children's minds, written when TV was invading American homes. The long rain channeled his hatred of constant Los Angeles drizzle and his deeper fear of nature's indifference, a rain that never stops like the atomic age's endless anxiety. Those stories weren't just entertainment, they were Bradbury's ways of screaming that our creations would devour us if we let them. Behind the scenes, Doubleday paid him $1,500 for the book, a fortune then, but Bradbury turned down Hollywood cash, insisting his words stay pure. It's a window into what drove him, the carnival magic of childhood twisted into adult horror, for a fear that our toys, our TVs, our nukes, our AI would turn on us. This series is our chance to listen. Ray Bradbury, the boy who wanted to live forever, inked warnings we're only now understanding. These tattooed prophecies ask, are we the parents in the veil, or children feeding the lion? Join us next time for SL Tonight as we keep peeling back the skin of the illustrated man. Good night.
Thank you and good night.
Rockets resting in green afternoon light. Typewriters dreaming all through the night. A smiling sun